Piper of Hartland. Okay, Richard, you and I are going to make some stuff up. I've been vaguely planning to do this for years. Because I went to a UFO conference in Mesquite, Nevada in the summer of 1999, and they were giving stuff away. I've never seen this before. Whenever I go to an English conference, it's mostly about people trying to flog you stuff. At this one, they had a guy giving away piles of stuff that had been given to them by their sponsors. I've been vaguely thinking about this for years. But a few weeks ago, I got an email from my mate and client, who's Eric Norlander, a prog rock keyboard player from California, who's probably most famous for playing in one of the last versions of Asia, and he's also the keyboard player of his own bands, the Rocket Scientists and the Galactic Collective, and he's married to a lovely lady called Lana Lane, who's probably better known in this country than he is, and he said, "Hey John, do you want a load of stuff for door prizes?" And I'd completely forgotten about door prizes. It's something Richard and I have talked about for years and not done it. And you had this tiny American comedian who I actually think was a midget. And he was coming up and saying, "Oh Gina, who came the longest distance to come to this place?" And I can't say Lars, because we know Lars came the longest distance, so I'm afraid, Lars, you are disqualified. Who, apart from Lars, came the longest distance? Rona. I suppose you did, didn't you?
Yes, but I don't think I really qualify coming from...
You probably don't, considering I paid for your air ticket. Rona, do you like interpretive progressive rock music?
Not usually, no.
Okay, you're disqualified. Who, apart from the two speakers, came the longest distance to be here?
Is it As the Crow Flies?
What? As the Crow. Is that Shoshana?
Yes, is it?
Shoshana, you really are my stepdaughter. How far did you turn up? Oh God, I think my two stepdaughters probably came the longest distance, and this is not good. No, Macclesfield's further north than they are.
Oh, Macclesfield's now we're from Durham.
Okay, where's Mark? Okay, David, can you come here, please? You got my iPad.
Actually, wait for it. No, Lars gets
so you can't actually work out which is farther. Can you do this on the laptop? Which is farther to come out of Macclesfield and of Norwich?
Durham.
Macclesfield to Durham.
Norwich is 250 for Stoke.
364 miles for Olivia and Aaron.
It's 250 for Stoke.
270 from Sussex.
270 to Sussex. Burnley? Is that a place? David was at a rock festival in Yorkshire last week. He was doing the power sound light stuff. And he phoned me up and said, "Uncle John, you didn't lie to me." And I said, "I never lie to you if I can." "What do you mean on this occasion?" He said, "You're right, it is grim up north." It's spent a week in a tent in the rain. So at the moment then, the first longest thing is Olivia and Aaron, who, as they are my stepdaughter and stepdaughter's significant others, probably cheating. Aaron, do you like progressive rock music interpretations? You do. You've got one. Who came second? Who came second? Don't all speak at once.
300 odd miles.
300 odd, very odd miles. Okay, come down here, you have a present. And who else will get? Who else?
How about Jordan? Yes.
Come here, Curtis.
400.
No, not you. Young Curtis. Come here, Miss Roseanne. Come here, Dr. Dan. I've always wanted to do this. Richard, will you please draw out of the hat a thingy at random? This is either a DVD or a record by somebody you've never heard of. But it's very good. What is it? That is Lana Lane's 10th anniversary concert for the lovely Roseanne, and
This is
Coronation Street.
Scandinavian death metal band Sick Vicar with their album Corpse Violator.
and yes, this conference is sponsored by Sick Vicar Enterprises.
And some,
Okay, who travelled the shortest distance?
Don't forget Aaron.
Oh God, how could I forget Aaron? You're going to say a few words for your acceptance speech, Aaron?
You're not getting any words from me.
And this is the calibre of person who is the father of my first grandchild. This is appalling. He refuses to talk to me. Off the stage, Aaron. Okay, you travelled the shortest distance. Is there anybody here from Hartland?
Yeah.
To give you a hint. Okay, out of you three.
I live up here.
I live here, I'm here.
Muirhead, you come from Macclesfield. Don't claim that you're claiming squatters' rights here in the small school. Which of you three came the shortest distance?
I live down, just down from the school, about 600 yards.
And your wife broke her toe the other day. That's the deciding point. Come down and get a prize. It was more slick when the American midget did it. I think I'd like to pretend I'm actually the world's largest midget, but probably not. That would probably count as being midgetist. So now, are you going to give an acceptance speech, Mr. Riley?
Cheers.
Oh man, a few words.
If it wasn't the fact you're married to my secretary, I'd say something very nasty.
Say something nasty.
I was very glad for you, dear boy. I still have more hair. That felt really flat. Anybody else? Richard Muirhead, can you tell me one good reason why I should give you a prize? And it's got to be an entertaining reason.
I like Devo and I can do their dance.
Did you bring the Devo hat?
So they'll get it all off.
Force him to do the dance.
Come up here, do the Devo dance. Richard will sing a Devo song. If you come up and do the Devo dance,
I got a choice, haven't I?
you have no choice.
Alright, okay.
are we not men?
Yeah, something like that. Right, this is called the Poos.
Eric Norlander live from St. Petersburg. I'll be giving away more stuff and other things that have been cluttering up my office just because I enjoy doing it. I'm actually enjoying this. I thought I would. So, ladies and gentlemen, over to Mr. Tadcaster, wherever he is. Where's Tadcaster? Rich?
Here, get us.
He's not at his massage parlour again, is he?
Very probably.
This is why it's listed as the best conference in the world. You don't get this as uncommon, do you?
Bloody well done, huh? Lars Thomas likes to put the kibosh on milkmen using the softly moaning ghost of a golf ball. He has a collection. It is a spoon, 2 biros and a pencil. He's showing you the collection now.
Since my collection is so large, I only brought part of it. Yes, well, good evening. My name is Lars Thomas, as Mr. Tadcaster so succinctly pointed out. I'm a zoologist and I come from Denmark, and I do a lot of the lab work for the CFZ, which is to say that I sit at home and look at hairs and droppings and pieces of skin and scales and stuff like that. I'm going to bring you, or tell you, a few tales from the CFZ lab, because I'd like to show you that although a lot of cryptozoology is done by fearless men and women in big hats, running around in steamy jungles and trying to catch the ghost of golf balls, or sometimes they, as a cryptozoologist, you have to move around in various strange places. You can also, in some cases, do cryptozoological work on a beach. And it's not entirely without risk to do cryptozoological work. I can personally attest that if you turn up on a beach in the middle of summer in Denmark, carrying various cameras and binoculars, it's almost a surefire recipe for awkward situations. But anyway, I'm going to tell you something from my lab, which is, of course, located in the wilds of Copenhagen, where strange things have known to be afoot. And earlier today, I think it was David I talked to, and he said that he had never been to a real lab. But, well, now you have the chance. This is, in fact, the CFZ lab. And this is the place where all kinds of stuff, books and sightings and samples and hairs and bones, and try to distract me from doing the things that I have to do to actually earn a living. A lot of people have asked me over the years, can you actually make a living from being a cryptozoologist? And there's a very strong, very long and complicated answer to that, but it can be expressed very clearly and succinctly, no. But as I said, I do a lot of work for the people who run around in various jungles and mountains, and because just gathering eyewitness testimony is just part of it. You have to have some kind of physical evidence somehow. And so I get a lot of rather strange things in the post. I live in a fairly nondescript part of Copenhagen, only about 5 minutes away from the Natural History Museum in Copenhagen. But I've already achieved a certain notoriety with the Danish postal authorities because I get a stream of unusual packages. They're often from foreign places. They are often crumbly, and in some cases they are rather smelly, and dare I say, moist. But what actually happens when I get a sample, and now we come to a serious bit. When I get a sample, whatever it is, in this case, it's 2 samples from the CFZ expedition last year to Tasmania, which you will hear more about tomorrow. But when I get these various samples, I try to be just a little bit scientific. I take a picture of them to make sure everything is all right, and then they all get noted in, they're actually standing on volume 1 of the CFZ lab log. This is where everything is written up. When I get it, who's sent it to me, what's it all about, and I make various notes as to whether I am ever able to identify whatever it is. And all these logs and all the samples that I save will, should the CFZ so wish, be deposited here in the center, in the HQ in Wiltering for the museum, if you like. But until further notice, they can be found in my lab in Copenhagen. And but they are also, I consider them a scientific collection. So if anybody wants to study any of these things, when I'm done with them, they're more than welcome to send me an email or write me a Facebook message or whatever. And you are free to have another look. But I'll, instead of droning on about this, I'll tell you, highlight a few of the cases that I've worked on, because most of the cases, I have to say, are fairly uninteresting and they usually amount to absolutely nothing. People see things, hear things that turn out to have a fairly straightforward and natural explanation. I have to say though that I'm not only working on CFZ samples. For some reasons, rumors have started to flow around the cryptozoological community, and now I'm receiving samples from all over the world. People I've never heard of before suddenly sends me something that they want me to have a look at. So interesting things happen. But the first case I have called the funny furry thing on the foreshore. This is a case from Denmark, and it's just I try to pick out some cases that gives you an idea of the variation of what I have to do to find out whatever it is that's going on. And this case started out in the form of this picture. I was sent by a Danish family. They had been on a walk on a central island in Denmark called Funen, and on the beach they found this rather weird-looking creature. I don't know if you can see that there's a snout here, a head, possibly some ears, and the body just kind of disappears off in the background. And up here you can possibly see something that looks like a tail and a leg. And this, by the way, demonstrates a fact that I would very much like each and every one of you to remember and tell it to everybody you come in contact with when it comes to cryptozoology. When you take a picture of anything, put something in there to give some sense of scale, for crying out loud. If we haven't got anything, there's no way to see how big this is. It isn't a whale, I know that, but it's so much easier. I mean, this one is dead. It's not going to run away anytime soon. So for Pete's sake, take your time, put down the lens cap or a glove or stick your foot into the picture or something, and stop taking pictures from the end like this, because that gives rise to a phenomenon known as forced perspective and makes it almost impossible to judge how big a thing is. And this forced perspective have actually been used in several cases to make rather spurious pictures of monsters, things that aren't that strange. Here's a good example. I mean, the way this picture has been taken, this bat looks like it's enormous. In actual fact, well, it is a flying dog and a flying fox, and flying foxes are big, but they're not big enough to eat or carry away 4 Filipino soldiers in one go. Anyway, in many cases, when I get something into the lab, there's not enough information to be certain as to what it is. So I told the people with the dead thing on the shore that I needed more information. Could they either go out and get it for me, or could they show me exactly where this animal was found, and I would go out and find it for myself. In the end, I had to go out and find it for myself because they said it stank to high heaven, and they had no interest in getting any closer to it. But of course, being a dedicated scientist, I don't mind. Actually, I quite like rummaging around in smelly things. if you spend a year and a half in a museum looking at various, as I did when I finished my graduation thesis, I spent a year and a half looking at pickled fish from all over the world, and then you learn to turn your sense of smell off. So I went to Funen and started rummaging around in the on the beach, and it was rather smelly, but after a little bit of digging and a little bit of washing, this came out of this strange bundle of greyish fur, whatever, a very nice looking skull of a dog. So this was this creature, which actually made it into one of the local newspapers as a sea monster, turned out to be a dog, and when I measured it, it was only a little more than a meter in length. It was a very, very modest sea monster. But then when you get a skull like this, you have to go on from that and try to find out what the thing actually is. And you make all kinds of comparisons with skulls that are already known. Either you have pictures or you go to a museum and look at their collections. And of course you are capable of narrowing it down. I was actually, without looking in any books, capable of seeing it was not the skull of a bird. So hence, but that's actually what you do a lot of. You compare your sample to a lot of other samples. I also do a lot of work studying hairs, the structure of hairs and identifying hairs. And to do that, you have to have a collection of hair samples from known animals to compare it with. Even the almost hallowed DNA analysis that you use so much nowadays is basically nothing more than a comparative analysis. You do a DNA analysis on an animal, and then you compare it with DNA from all kinds of, there's entire databases of DNA you can find on the internet, and you compare it with what you have there and see if anything matches. And actually, if anybody is interested and wants to have a look, here.
Do you want the light on?
No, that's okay, they can't see anything anyway. I might as well show them a package of chewing gum. But actually, this is a sample of, if anybody wants to have a look, there's a bunch of reddish hair in them. They were sent to me just a week before I came over here from a New Zealand guy I know who's been traveling around Indonesia and Southeast Asia for the last year or so. And these are supposed to be orang-pendek hairs, or at least a hair from a wild man that lives in the forest, given to him by natives in Borneo. Now I haven't had a chance to have a proper look at them yet, but this is going to happen very soon after I come home, so, on Monday. So you'll know if it's anything interesting. But if anybody wants to have a look later, just let me know. Okay, and sometimes you get things that are, in a sense, not cryptozoological, but just strange zoological things, and people would like to know how, where, when, what happened, and what is this. For instance, this next one I was sent by a guy who had found it in a trunk when his grandfather had died, and he would very much like to know what that was. No, it's this is actually no, it's actually an ordinary pig with some kind of disorder that made its teeth grow like mad. As you can see, one of the tusks has actually penetrated the jawbone and grown inwards into the mouth of it. I went to the veterinarian high school in Copenhagen, and they said it was not unknown for this phenomenon to happen. I know Josh can probably tell you more in details about how this happened, whether it's a genetic thing but you get things like that every now and then. And then to go for another case, which will ring a bell for several of the people from the CFZ. We go over to the curious case of the spiny mouse in the spare bedroom. I've always been very fond of Sherlock Holmes, but nevertheless. If you think that is a dead mouse in a jar, you're right. It is a dead mouse in a jar, but it's not your everyday mouse. This is in fact a spiny mouse that used to run around in a cage in John's spare bedroom, I think.
Back in Karina's bathroom.
Oh, okay, in Karina's bathroom, whatever. It used to be a live spiny mouse in the CFZ headquarters. And some years ago, when I was, I think it was at a weird weekend, we talked about this, and Jonathan said that he really didn't know exactly what species of spiny mouse it was. So I said, well, I'll give it a whirl and see if I can identify it. It's not that unusual that animals that you buy in the pet trade are unknown or haven't got a proper scientific name or a proper scientific discussion. I'm sure if you talk to Nick Wadham about it tomorrow, he can easily tell you, for instance, that if you are into exotic animals, big colorful bugs or beetles and stuff like that, there are lots of them out there in the pet shops with no scientific name. There are lots of aquarium fishes that haven't been probably identified, despite the fact that you have been able to buy them for years and years and years. No one just bothered to do it. And it's not entirely without interest to identify the animal, because there's 21 different species of spiny mice. So it'll be nice to know which one. And it could conceivably have been a new one, because when I started looking at the hairs of the spiny mouse, I was completely unable to match it with any hair sample of spiny mice I was capable of laying my hands on. And sometimes you get an answer very quickly, and sometimes it takes years. And in this case, it actually did take years. Just for the record, they look like that when they're alive. Very nice and cuddly, and they make very good pets. They are easy to keep, and you can buy them in a lot of different places. Now, spiny mice hairs look very strange compared to the hairs of other mammals, because they have these strange flanges on the sides. But still, they have like all other hairs, there are various structural things you can look at and study. And but I still wasn't able to match them. So it took a long time, and I had to have help from people at the Zoological Museum in Copenhagen. And after a lot of work, we finally found out, and now I have to check my notes. The real name. And it was either this species, which is the genus Acomus, that's the spiny mice. It was either this species, Acomus caherinus, or it was this one, which is Acomus siliceus. It's one of those two. We actually haven't been able to identify them all the way. The guys at the museum say it is because they are very, very close, and so in some cases you simply can't do it. I personally, after having compared the hairs with hair samples from these two species, tend to more think along the lines of it's actually a hybrid of those two species. But we won't know for certain until I am able to persuade a DNA specialist to do a DNA analysis of this mouse. And for some reason they don't seem to think that analyzing a dead spiny mice from a glass cage in a little village in Devon is very high up on the list of priorities. But and now this is the part of my lecture where I would have made a setup for Max Blake, who was supposed to have been here, and give a lecture about DNA and cryptozoology. So I will try to give you a little idea of what a DNA analysis actually consists of. But it's only going to be the basic things, because basically I haven't got a clue. But what you actually do, you take a sample of the animal, either the hair or skin sample or an organ sample, tissue sample, and you extract the DNA molecules from that. And then you can, via a special chemical process, make millions of copies of the DNA molecule, which means for 20 years ago, to make a DNA analysis, you had to have a very large tissue sample. But now a single hair or a very small tissue sample is enough, because you simply just copy the DNA. And then DNA consists of 4 basic molecules in various combinations. And you can analyze the DNA molecules and see how these 4 basic molecules are sitting along the length of the DNA molecule. And then you have this DNA analysis results. Looks incredibly boring, because you get long reams and reams of papers with nothing but lines of letters and letters and letters. And then you have a computer comparing this with another lines of letters and letters and letters. And if there's a correspondence, then you can say, it's a big correspondence, well, it's this species. And if it's not, well, it's this genus or it's this family. And sometimes you can't find any kind of things that compare with whatever you have found. And all this tells you is that this is a species, or it's a piece of a species that you don't know anything about. It's not necessarily an entire new one, but it's one that you haven't got in your database. You can't see from the DNA or from a hair. It doesn't have a little name on it. This has been found on a spiny mouse of that, and this you can only see it's not one of the ones you know already. Yeah, and another case, and this brings us back to the 2 samples you saw at first, a case which I have called hence, I told you earlier on about my notoriety with the Danish postal authorities. And this was probably the worst case of them all, because I arrived home one day and there was a note in my mailbox saying that there was a letter waiting for me at the local post office, and would I please come over there and collect it. And there was a little remark saying that I had to talk to the postmaster at said post office, because there was something special about this package. So I went there, and I was in a very good mood, and I was given a rather moist and smelly letter. And this girl at the post office asked me very sternly and serenely, what would I please tell them what was in that? And I already knew that it was a packet that Richard Freeman had sent me, and it contained 2 samples of poo from Tasmania. And I very happily, in perhaps a voice a little bit too loud, told her this. And I suddenly realized that everything in the post office had gone strangely quiet. And everybody was looking at me, and this girl, kind of handed me the envelope and stepped away from the counter. And I just smiled and said bye and went off with my sample. And I had this distinct feeling that she was going out back and washing her hands very thoroughly when I had left. Now, this has something to do with the Tasmanian tiger, or thylacine. I'll only say very little about this because Richard is going to be telling you a lot about it tomorrow. But the thing is that the expedition found some samples of poo, and it looked very big to be it could have been from the Tasmanian tiger, and that was the thing. Was it from a Tasmanian tiger? It could have been from one of these, a Tasmanian devil, but Richard and others in the expedition thought that the poos were too big. So, here they are. And it turned out that the smelly, moist envelope was because one of the lids hadn't been secured properly. But then, when you do, it sounds a bit strange, but poo and regurgitated bits and all that kinds of things, actually, you can extract an enormous amount of information from stuff like that. And I, for one, find it fascinating that you can find so much information from so little. But although it is a bit of a conversation killer when I try to explain at a party or something, people that I've never met before, that I spend an inordinate amount of time rummaging around and stuff like that, and even telling them that I like it. Anyway, if you look a little closer on one of these samples, one of these poo samples, you see a lot of things. First of all, you see an enormous amount of black hairs, and you see all these white bits. All these white bits are actually crunched up bone, and that's almost a complete giveaway for a Tasmanian devil, because they have quite a fantastic set of teeth, and they are quite capable of eating their prey. Actually, they're mainly scavengers, and when they find a carcass somewhere, they're quite capable of eating it with bones and just about everything in it. As you can see, there's a very massive set of teeth, and as you can see in these very large holes here, they used to have very large cheek muscles, and when you have teeth like that and muscles like that, you are capable of eating just about anything. I've heard stories about Tasmanian devils biting tin cans in half, and I've personally talked to a zookeeper at a small zoo in Tasmania who actually lost part of one of his fingers one morning when he was giving the Tasmanian devils their morning feed, and he was just being a little bit careless, and he told me that it happened so quickly and so cleanly that it actually took several seconds before he realized that his finger count was down from 10 to 9.5. But bones doesn't do it, so I spent a lot of time, and I would like to repeat that, a lot of time, and again, a lot of time, picking one of these poo samples apart. And not only finding all these bone fragments, but also hairs from at least 7 different animals. You see, the thing is, if you find excrement poo samples from a mammal, you are almost guaranteed to find some of the mammal's own hair in it. Because animals, you know, every one of you who has a dog or a cat knows that they clean their own fur by licking, and they lick off lots of hairs. And hairs are almost impossible to digest, so they will, unless cats, they regurgitate most of them, but a lot of them will simply pass through and come out the other end with the hair sample, with the poo. So if you pick all these hairs apart, you can see not only what has this animal eaten, but also what animal was it. And I am afraid I have to tell you that not a single hair in that was from anything but Tasmanian devils and wallabies and various other bits and pieces that it had eaten. And I can tell you, which would probably make Richard jump with joy, that one of the Tasmanian devil had eaten a cat. So I'm afraid that this was not proof that the Tasmanian tiger still exists, but one day the proof will come, because just like Richard, I'm quite certain that it does. So, I could see that time was, we were a bit late, so I've narrowed my talk a little bit. So I think I'll stop here, and if anybody have any questions, now is the time to bring them out in the open. Yeah, Richard.
Maybe you could tell the something about the
Rich, you've got fairly quiet voice. Can you do the microphone?
maybe you could tell repeat the story, because some people here will not have heard it, of the orangutan death sample we brought back and your findings on that.
Yeah. So CFZ has arranged several expeditions to Sumatra to try and find evidence for the existence of the orang-pendek, the Indonesian version of the abominable snowman, if you like, some kind of bipedal primate that lives in the forest of Sumatra. And Richard and other people who's been out there has been bringing home several hair samples from the jungles, and I've been analyzing all of them, and we have tried to do DNA analysis of several of them. Several of the samples has been in such a poor state we couldn't actually say anything for sure, but one sample which I think is the most interesting, I can't right now remember which expedition it was brought home from, but the analysis of that, I am absolutely in no. It looked like orangutan hair, but not quite. And from my experience with hairs, it's from an animal related to the orangutan, but not an orangutan. Unfortunately, the DNA analysis couldn't show anything, any certain result. One of the trouble with hair samples from tropical climates is that hairs, the DNA starts to degrade very, very quickly when it's out in the jungle. So unless you find the hairs within a very short time after it's fallen off the animal, you probably won't be able to say anything. But from the structure of the hair, I have absolutely no doubt that there's an unknown primate living in Sumatra. It might be a third species of orangutan, which would be fantastic in itself, but it looks like but it is closely related to the orangutan, although not an orangutan. But that's about as close as we can get it at this moment, until somebody brings some better samples, or maybe, as I said, what I have here in my pocket, whatever this turns out to be, because if this has structural similarities to the samples that Richard had brought home from Sumatra, then this is an unknown primate as well. And then we can get some people at the DNA lab at the University of Copenhagen, which is one of the best in the world, and get them to do an analysis of them. And we shall see what that brings.
Lars, you said just now that because hair is pretty well impossible to digest, you can get the DNA from the hair that has passed through the digestive process.
No, I didn't say that.
No, you didn't.
No,
That's what happens on half dead.
I said that the hairs are almost impossible to digest. So the hairs themselves are in very good condition when they come out in the other end.
Yeah.
So I can identify them by structure.
But not
by DNA, because that goes. And
that's what I was going to ask you. If DNA degrades in tropical heat, surely it degrades even more in somebody's gut.
Oh yes.
So that's a question you already answered, now it gives the thank you.
Yeah.
Some years ago, that some hairs were collected on one of these weekends that you did some analysis on. Could you say something about that?
That's actually the ones that I've just been talking about.
No, the cats.
No, the cat hairs, you mean? Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yes. I can't remember what weekend it was, but
2009. 2009
at Hottisford Wood outside of Woolsey.
Sorry, 2010.
Some cat hairs were found in close to a path through the forest, and I brought them home and well, actually I did some analysis here at the Weird Weekend, and I had no doubt that they were leopard hairs. And I was lucky enough at the time that Jonathan McGowan was here, and he usually to his exhibition brings leopard skin, so I could take some hairs. I have leopard hairs at home as well, but I took some hairs from his skin and made a comparison. So there was no doubt that they were leopard hairs. And I brought them home and I compared them with other leopard samples from the Natural History Museum, and there was no doubt at all that they were leopard hairs. And later on, two different DNA researchers actually did a DNA analysis on the hairs, and they were even capable of narrowing it down to what subspecies of leopard it was, because they were so well preserved. Because this is not a tropical climate, so hairs can last, and DNA in hairs can last considerably longer. So there was no doubt that it was the hairs from a leopard at all.
What subspecies?
Sub-Saharan.
It was one of the sub-Saharan ones. I can't remember the exact one right now. You can, but one of those.
Any other questions? Richard, you look like you've got a question.
No.
You haven't got a question.
He's had that bemused expression all the time.
I'll ask you some questions. Any other questions?
Surely these leopard hairs, if they're found in the vicinity of Wolseley, won't they have come from...
No, and for some reason, I've always been under the impression that he's human.
Well, yes, but things around with him, won't he? You know, they're kind of in the atmosphere there.
Yes, but the hairs were actually found in a single tuft on a piece of bramble. If somebody had been either walking through the forest in an old tatty leopard fur coat, we should have found hairs all over the place. And we had a lot of hair samples because we found hairs up and down the forest along the pathway. And there's a lot of people that walk their dogs in there. And we found heaps of dog hairs. We found badger hairs and mice hairs. And we found a couple of long blonde hairs from a woman as well. But we only found, actually on a piece of bramble, we found, there was the strange combination. That's why we found those long blonde hair from a woman, because you can actually see the difference between a man and a woman's hairs, but that's technical. But on this bramble we found a tuft of badger hair, and we found a tuft of dog hair from what I think was a small terrier or something, and then we found these long blonde hairs from a woman. So I think that a badger has gone past there, and this lady had been out walking her dog, and the dog had smelled the badger, gone over, and tried to root in these brambles, and the lady had come back here, and dropped a couple of her hairs as well. So if somebody had been, distributing leopard hairs, we would have found them in more places than just one.
The thing that I found particularly intriguing was that nearly all the by a long way, nearly all the sightings of big cats around here have been either dark brown or black. But the sub-Saharan subspecies of leopard are not the ones that commonly have the black colour. It's not unknown, but it's not common.
No, they're usually typical leopard, yellow with black spots on it. Yeah.
Which is why I said this at various cat conferences along the road as the years, and people have then said, oh, John Danvers trying to debunk that there are very, very few sightings of spotted cats. And that's something I really don't understand.
Would that be a psychology thing? It's that you see a big cat and you expect it to be a particular colour.
Amy, darling, can you shout?
Sorry. Would that possibly be one of those sort of psychological things where you see a big cat and you automatically, even though you see spots, your brain says that's a dark cat, it must be.
Yeah.
But, so you actually, what you remember is not what you see.
Now, that's a very, very good point. How many people here are actually from vaguely the Wolseley, Hartland, North Devon area? Very few of you, but some of you. Do you know the road that goes out? You know the road that goes out when you're going out to Huddersfield, and you go down to a dip, and then it goes up the hill to a farm. Well, I've known people for years. I can't remember the head of school. But there's a stream on the dip down there that goes across the road, and there's a bridge that goes over the stream. And for decades, there have been sightings, reports coming to me of big cats seen crossing that bridge. So Richard and I, by the way, if you're going to the bar, it's closed. Sorry, guys.
I'm not.
Okay. You usually do, Richard. But Richard and I put 4 trail cameras out. And we got all sorts of things that we didn't get. We didn't get hide nor hair of a big cat. But what we did get was there was a whole little herd of roe deer that crossed at that very place. There were badgers that crossed at that very place. There was an otter that crossed at that very place. And I think that the concept of big cats in Britain is so ingrained into everybody's consciousness. They're driving along, they see something go zoop across the road, and instead of saying, goodness me, it's a roe deer, your brain plays tricks on you. I'm having this at the moment because I've never made any secret of the fact that I've had mental health difficulties of one kind or another for a long time. And I've been on antipsychotic medicine. And the whole thing about when you have a psychosis in your brain, if you've got a gap that you can't explain, your brain makes something up to make that what happened seem logical. At the moment I've got ear infections in both ears, and my hearing is bloody terrible. And with completely hilarious results. My brain is filling in the gaps of what I don't hear. Richard Muirhead was talking to me yesterday, and he was saying something about how his capuchin was in a coracle. And obviously he hasn't got a, well, I've known Richard over 40 years, he probably has got a capuchin in a coracle, but I'm living proof that your brain does fill in the gaps. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't big cats in the UK. We know there are. We've got the hair, we've had the DNA from 2 unimpeachable sources, and as well as that, I've seen them on 2 occasions. But I think an awful lot of what is reported as big cats is something else. Dan.
This morning, out of sheer interest, I took a ride on my bike along the Hobby Drive near Clovelly.
Yes.
Now,
did you see Richard's coracle?
No,
did you return?
Rain filled in the gap. Now, much to my dismay, cycling along there, I started to encounter pheasant poults. I've nothing much against pheasants, but where there are pheasant poults, there is likely to be a gamekeeper. Now, if you are putting down a large number of pheasant poults onto an area, you are basically overstocking a wood with probably the stupidest bird on the planet. If you are doing this, you therefore have to indulge in what is euphemistically termed predator control. What you do is you go out with somebody who is capable of imitating an extremely distressed rabbit, and you also have a lamp and a gun of some sort. And you basically stand around making a noise like a rabbit dying in agony. And most predators think, that's a rabbit, better go and help it, eat it, yes, help it on its way. Now, if there is one group of people who are likely to see a big cat coming to see what's going on, it is the people who are out shooting foxes. They'll see a big cat, they won't shoot. They're probably using something that's no way capable of killing a big cat. But they'll see it, They'd probably shout, get lost or something, and move somewhere else. But these are the people that you would really like to ask, have you seen something with big eyes, that's bigger than a fox, that came for a look, then scarpered? So, the question is, have we asked that question?
Yes, I have. I've actually talked to probably an even more likely community, which is the poaching community. And you would be surprised at quite how many interesting answers we've received.
Quite like to hear some of those.
Okay, the best story of the lot is got nothing to do with big cats. I was in a pub in Kenton, which is just outside between Dawlish and Exeter. This was when I was a student about 30 years ago. And I was in the pub, and there was a friend of mine who, quite a lot of you were at the party last night, and you may have seen a guy with short hair, an earring, and the look about being a singer-songwriter about him. Smiled, met Mike Davis. Some of you know Mike. I was in this pub in Kenton. Mike came rushing in, slightly the worse for wear. Shit, man, I've just seen a giant rabbit, man. It was a wallaby. Because in the 1940s, there was a lady who lived just outside Starcross who kept wallabies as pets. And she bred them for years. Some of these had escaped and were living right in the most protected bits of the Powderham Castle estate, where the Earl of Devon does his thing. And the local people thought there were giant rabbits there, because the only time they ever went there was either to check on their marijuana crop or to go for hazelnuts. Don't ask me what the link is between marijuana and hazelnuts, I have no idea. But the same people seem to do both. And I have no idea. But the story got up around the local community with giant rabbits there. Even stories came out that the Earl of Devon was breeding giant rabbits in order to be able to shoot them. They're wallabies. I'm quite happy to talk to people from both sides of the law. And over the years, we've had some quite interesting stories through. But, Dan, we are 25 minutes late at the end of the first day of the 15th weird weekend. And here we have Nicola. Yes, Nicola? I was just about to
Can I just ask Lars one quick question? Do you believe any large African animals have ever walked through Macy's perfume department in New York?
I would say that depends on whether anybody have had them as a pet or something like that.
Do you remember the story you told us years ago of waiting for your wife, choosing perfume, and you picked her hair?
Yeah, rhinoceros hair, yeah.
And where was it?
Yeah, it was not in Macy's, but something similar in Copenhagen, yeah. Well, that story, for those of you who haven't heard it, when a couple of weird weekends ago, I gave a lecture about analyzing hairs, and I said that hairs were funny because you could find strange hairs on the strangest places. And I was at one stage in a very posh department store in Copenhagen and waiting for my wife, and I looked down and I saw this very large hair lying on the floor, and I picked it up and brought it home and looked at it, and it turned out to be a hair from a rhinoceros, which is rather strange. My personal opinion is that someone had been in Africa and had bought, you can buy bracelets made out of either elephant hair or rhinoceros hair, and this had either become unraveled or just dropped the hair in exactly that spot. But it was kind of fun that probably the only person in Denmark capable of seeing what it actually was, actually found it.
We've got time for one last point. We haven't got time for 2 chairs. Any last questions? Your last chance, Mr. Muirhead. Do you want to ask about your coracle?
It's saying.
Okay. I've known Lars for about 15 years, I think. Something like that, yeah. Something like that. And he has been a close friend as well as a much valued colleague for a long time. And it's always a joy to have him at the Weird Weekend. In fact, he seems to be here nearly as often as Ronan. We can't really get rid of him. I'm beginning to think he's going to claim squatters' rights in Woolsbury. Or at Hartland this time. At least we've managed to get him out of Woolsbury. He's staying in Hartland this time. But, ladies and gentlemen, it's always a pleasure. Lars Thomas. Don't leave, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave, Karina. Stand up and look menacing. Stand. Have you got your clipboard there? Clipboard. I think we've got a clipboard. Unless Graham left it in the car and went home again. Now, speaker's dinner, Sunday night. Well, thank you to take the dearest. Sorry? Well, Sunday night we have speaker's dinner. It is chicken paella. Oh dear. Karina, glamorous assistant.
Strangely strange, but oddly normal.